As you all know, I am an avid Japanese studier and learner. In a previous video of mine, I talked about my process and how I study Japanese, and one of the key parts of that is consuming Japanese media, books, movies, TV shows, games. Since making that video though, I've been thinking more about that, and how I want to dive into it more and give it its own video. Of course, there is so much Japanese media you can use to study, from watching anime, live action TV, dramas, to even simple YouTube videos. They all have their pros and cons, but it can be kind of daunting to figure out where to start. What's actually good practical Japanese to learn? How you can use those words later in separate independent study to understand it more, and taking that initial step into fully consuming Japanese media can be really scary. That's what I want to go over today, specifically through the lens of anime, since I know a lot of you are probably anime nerds, like myself. It is often degraded as being really bad, or like just a weeb's dream of learning Japanese so they can watch anime and go to anime land in Japan. But how practical is it actually to study Japanese through anime? That's what I want to talk about today, and how you can do all this. What to keep in mind, what anime are actually useful to watch, and which ones might not be so helpful, because not all anime are created equal. However, maybe you just don't want to watch anime or would like more of a structured workflow when it comes to this type of study. That's where today's sponsor, FluentU, can come in handy. FluentU is a very useful tool that can work in conjunction with your own language study, that is designed to support you in your immersion into a language through media online. It's very easy to use thanks to the part that I find most pertinent to me and my needs, the FluentU Chrome extension, which once installed allows you to study using any YouTube or Netflix video that has subtitles. It lets you look up the word directly from the captions, provides example sentences so you can understand how to use the word in context, tips to remember it, and other video examples that the FluentU team curates to be useful to you as a learner. You can even add your own videos to the library via URL if it has subtitles attached to it. I enjoy it because of how seamless and unobtrusive it is. When you want it, it's there for your own use. In addition, FluentU has its own robust and integrated review methods based on the words you've learned, which starts with just the words by themselves and later builds up to full sentences containing them. If you struggle to find good videos to study and practice from, FluentU also has deep video libraries sorted by skill level, so you don't get in over your head too quickly and get overwhelmed. That's happened to me in the past, and it is scary and confusing, so it's a great thing that they can sort that out for you. Aside from the Chrome extension and web app, FluentU is also available on iOS and Android devices for you to use. Alan and the team over at FluentU reached out to me for this, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to be my first video sponsor, since it is relevant to everything I talk about on this channel. And if you sign up using the link below, you will get a forever discount of 40% off your 12-month subscription to FluentU, which I think is just an amazing deal. So yes, thanks again, and now back to the video. Precursor. In order to really learn Japanese from anime, you have to watch it without English subtitles. They will always be a crutch for you. You'll rely on them and often automatically read them without processing it, and it ruins the whole thing. You have to throw yourself into the deep end and accept that there will be things you don't understand. The goals, at least for me when practicing Japanese by watching anime, is to put the things I've learned into practical use, finding new words and understanding as much as I can, and being able to fill in the gaps when I don't know something. It's about upping my Japanese language processing. I can't really take the time to watch it slowly or pause it constantly to think about it, because when you're talking to someone in real life, you can't do that. I just have to say, shogunai, go with the flow, and try my best to keep up. Another thing to touch on, what skills can you actually improve through watching anime? This also applies to any media you watch in Japanese. Obviously listening, translation, and interpretation, which is very hard at first, but there is a secret technique that I know about, which I will share with you just now. I didn't say you couldn't use Japanese subtitles. As a good transition from watching Japanese with English subs to fully without, which is the end goal, using Japanese subtitles to read along or support your listening can be helpful, and you also improve your reading skills since it is also at a fast pace. This can help with the many synonyms that Japanese has, and in fact a lot of native speakers will need subtitles when watching Japanese media. That's why even on Japanese TV shows they'll sometimes have subtitles. Okay, enough babbling. Let's go through some of the most popular anime genres and take a look at which anime I think are pretty good for learning Japanese, and some that might not be as useful for their own justifiable reasons. Starting with shonen. In my opinion, Ranma half and most modern day setting shonen, such as Jujutsu Kaisen or Chainsaw Man, are all pretty good because they follow teenagers, typically young people in modern day using typical slang and dialogue, which will be useful for you in a practical sense. Bad ones would be less grounded shows such as Dragon Ball or One Piece. They tend to use a lot of uncommon words relating to their world building or their power systems. For example, you probably won't be talking about devil fruit very often or haki or ki from Dragon Ball in real life. I know, I wish One Piece was real, and I've tried doing a Kamehameha, but it didn't work, and in Japan, it also won't work. I'm so sorry to tell you this. Seinen. Some good ones include Kaguya-sama Lover's War. It's a dialogue-heavy show which gives you plenty of practice. They often talk about what teenagers are into, the behavior behind things, and explore a bunch of different topics. So you're bound to learn a lot of good vocabulary here. Another one that I'm kind of putting in as a half good example is Lupin the Third. There's lots of different topics explored through different parts of the world, and you can practice understanding someone with a very strong accent and unique way of speaking in Lupin the Third himself. He speaks so weird that it gives you a good taste of what other anime characters or TV show characters might speak like when watching other media. Some not great ones, again, shows that aren't super grounded, probably aren't the best. An example of an amazing show that might not be great to study from is Delicious in Dungeon. Its world building is so good and immersive and the characters are so good, but that is the reason why you shouldn't use it to study. You won't be talking about fantasy elements in everyday life very often. At best, you could probably learn the cooking techniques they talk about if you're into cooking, but even then it's pretty specialized and niche, so I can't recommend it in a general sense. For Shojo and josei, you've actually got a very wide pool to select from. A lot of these anime tend to be really grounded in reality, since a lot of them are slice of life or have romance elements, and again tend to feature younger characters. So aside from probably magical girl shows or historical dramas, most of them are good to study from. Granted, my shoujo and josei knowledge isn't the deepest, but of the few I have seen, I'd recommend Ouran High School Host Club, and for josei, I've currently been watching Usagi Drop, completely in Japanese. And that is a really cute anime with an amazing art style, and it covers people from all different parts of their life, different ages, and they're interacting with each other, and they're having real grounded discussions and talk. It's a good slice of life show. Just for the love of God, do not read the manga. Which I know is really weird for anime, but this one, it's a good reason, and everyone that knows it understands why. Isekai and mecha. Look, I don't really watch these genres that much, but since they often take place in fantasy worlds that aren't very grounded in the case of many isekai, or have crazy plots and complicated terms, such as in mecha shows, I'd wager a guess that they're probably not the best to study from. I mean, most people can barely understand Evangelion in English, let alone trying to understand it while not being fluent in Japanese. Then again, mecha fans, you guys are really into these kinds of things, maybe it would work for you. Go wild, guys. Movies. Now this is my area of expertise. Movies actually have great examples to study from. I feel like the majority of well-known and popular anime films tend to have slice-of-life elements or take place in a relatively modern setting, often with younger people like teenagers as the main cast, which I have mentioned prior. Some great examples that I'm sure many of you know are Makoto Shinkai's films, such as Your Name, Suzume, or Weathering with You. Mamoru Hosoda's films, specifically I would say Mirai, because it covers people from all different walks of life in different ages, as well as Summer Wars and The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Not only are they amazing films regardless, but they're good to study from too. Another recent one I'd recommend is Ghost Cat Anzu. Despite having a lot of fantasy elements of its yokai and depiction of the underworld and a friggin' cat as the main character, it is genuinely such a chill and casual film in the way that it's all depicted and how the dialogue is spoken. It was also filmed using a lot of live-action reference and rotoscope, so it all feels very natural and grounded, which I feel adds a lot of realism to what you might have in actual conversations with people in Japan. Then there's of course the juggernaut anime films, Studio Ghibli. While a lot of them are good, yes, I'd say that only about 50% of them are good for studying, in my opinion. Half of them focus a lot more on fantasy elements and take place in magical worlds, which don't use common dialogue or they take place in the past, so a lot of the terms would be pretty dated. The other half though, which also tend to be the underwatched and underappreciated films, are the slice-of-life stories that take place much closer to modern day and feature really good dialogue and are excellent to study from. So, with all of these good examples, why does anime have this horrible reputation and perception of being bad to learn and practice the language? After all, for most people that learn a second language, say English for example, the majority would say that TV shows and movies were essential in learning and getting to use the language. Of course, on average, watching something like a live-action drama or the news or even a reality show might be more practical for everyday Japanese language, but for a lot of the people that want to learn Japanese, they like it because of things like anime or games. And yes, sometimes they may be bad to study from or just be over-exaggerated in the acting and everything. I don't think that devalues the medium as a whole. I feel like there's still part of this lingering bad reputation that anime has online in certain communities, and just from the 2010s that is carried over to the modern day, which realistically anime has grown and changed a lot since, and even back then there were still good shows to study from. A lot of the shows I've mentioned here are even kind of old. People will always judge you for trying to do something a bit out of the ordinary, but if you enjoy it and it encourages to study and continue to learn, then I don't see that as being a bad thing at all. Of course, you have to be a good, conscious learner and know what is good and what is bad for taking in information, which is what we've talked about today. But you shouldn't feel insecure about using anime to learn. And while I do emphasize that you can use anime to learn Japanese, it shouldn't be your only source of studying, which I have reiterated in almost all of my videos on the topic. Simply consuming won't be enough to actually fully understand and be able to create and convey your own thoughts in a second language. It should always be supplementary to your other study. And if you can get it, practical use by speaking to people in Japanese in your everyday life is, of course, the best. What it is amazing for, however, is giving you confidence and enjoying a language. I've said it before, but there's nothing more magical than finally watching a show and understanding Japanese because of the hard work you've put in. There's no greater tangible progress you can really get. And look, a lot of us want to learn Japanese because we enjoy anime, manga, and games, and in a lot of cases they're what inspired us to pick up the language. So there's no greater joy than having a hobby you already enjoy getting enriched by learning Japanese. And hey, when you can understand a language, that allows you to get deeper into the hobby. Do you know how many games or smaller but good manga that have never gotten localizations? There's tons just waiting to be discovered. So please, go out there, discover them, enjoy them, watch anime, do all the weeby stuff, learn the language and study, but most importantly, just make sure you're enjoying it. Because if you're doing that, then you're really not doing anything wrong in regards to studying. So thank you for watching, and once again, thank you to FluentU for being my first ever video sponsor. It's a big step on my YouTube creator journey, and I feel like it was a good sponsorship to get started with, so I'm actually quite happy with it. Let me know what you thought of the video and everything, and your thoughts on studying from anime. Were there any shows that I perhaps missed, or any good suggestions you might have that I didn't cover here? I'd be really interested to know. And if you are up to the point in your language study where you can watch media in that language just fairly easily, I'm really interested to know about that. So yeah, and I'll see you all on the next video. Bye bye!